Okay, so when you hear the word grammar, what pops into your head? Probably a bunch of dusty old rules from school, right? Well, I'm here to tell you that what you learned is likely wrong, or at least it's only a tiny part of a much bigger, more fascinating story. We're going to reframe what grammar really is. Let's get into it. It all starts with a question that sounds simple but is actually kind of profound. How does an idea, any idea, get from my mind into yours? I mean, think about it. We do this all day long without even blinking. It feels like magic, but how does it actually work? Well, on a physical level, it's this wild chain reaction. My lungs push out air, my vocal cords start vibrating, my mouth and tongue shape all those vibrations into sounds, then those sound waves hit your eardrums, and your brain somehow translates all of it back into an idea. It's an incredible physical journey for sure, but that's not even the most amazing part. The real magic isn't in the air, it's in our minds. And that's where this idea of mental grammar comes in. This isn't a rule book you carry around. It's this amazing, invisible, and totally unconscious system of knowledge that we all share. It's like the operating system for language that's running in the background of your brain right now, letting you understand what I'm saying. So, what exactly is this secret system made of? Let's pop the hood and take a look at the mental grammar that you've been using your entire life, probably without ever thinking about it. Turns out, it's a whole masterpiece of different layers working together. You've got phonology, which tells you how sounds can fit together. You've got a lexicon, that's your mental dictionary. Then there's morphology for how words get built, and syntax for how sentences are structured. And finally, semantics, which is how your brain calculates the final meaning of it all. It's this whole beautiful, intricate system. You know, you might be thinking, I don't have all that. But you do. Let's prove it right now. Look at these two made-up words, blifter and ilbitfer. Which one feels like it could be an English word, and which one just feels wrong? Go with your gut, blifter or ilbitfer. I'm willing to bet you picked blifter. And you're right. But why? No one ever sat you down and taught you the rule that a word in English can't start with LB. Your brain just knew. That gut feeling? That's your mental grammar in action. It's this incredibly powerful implicit knowledge you use every single second you're communicating. Okay, so now that we've established that you're a grammar genius, we can get to the real heart of the issue. This is where we see a huge conflict in how we think about language. The difference between describing what people do and prescribing what they should do. And this is a really crucial distinction to make. On one side, you have descriptive grammar. That's what linguists and scientists do. They just observe and describe how people actually use language with zero judgment. On the other side, you have prescriptive grammar. This is probably what you got in English class, a set of rules that tells you how you're supposed to use language and judges you as right or wrong. Here's a perfect example of what I mean. A descriptive observation is just a fact. Hey, look, English speakers add an S to make things plural. Simple. But a prescriptive rule says something like, you must say vitrea instead of viruses because the word comes from Latin. One describes reality, the other tries to force an old external rule onto it. And from that scientific, descriptive point of view, here's a foundational principle. Every single language and every dialect of every language has a complete, complex, and totally valid grammar. There's no such thing as a language that's linguistically better or more logical than another. It's like a biologist saying a jellyfish is worse than a tiger. They're just different, perfectly adopted systems. Now, this might sound like just some academic squabble, but it's not. This difference between describing and prescribing has huge, real-world consequences that can impact people's jobs, their education, and sometimes even their freedom. So when we talk about a standard language, like Standard English, what are we really talking about? It's not some pure, perfect version of the language. It's just the dialect that happens to be spoken by the people who hold the economic, social, and political power. It's a standard of power, not a standard of quality. And this way of thinking causes real harm. Take Haiti, for example. Over 90% of the population speaks Haitian Creole. It's the language of their home, their community, but in school, they're often taught in French, which sends a powerful message to these kids that the way they naturally speak is wrong or broken. The stakes can get even higher. There was a case in Canada where a judge actually threw out a doctor's expert medical testimony because he had a Nigerian English accent. The judge decided the doctor wasn't credible because of the way he spoke. I mean, the bias against his dialect had potential life or death consequences. And in one of the most heartbreaking examples, A black deaf man who used Black ASL, which is a distinct and valid dialect of American Sign Language, was wrongly institutionalized for decades. The assessors didn't recognize his dialect, so they just labeled his communication as incoherent and decided he was incompetent. A total failure to understand linguistic diversity. One of the sources for this explainer really cuts to the heart of it, because so much of this bias is subconscious. It points out that when people say standard language, they usually think the language that white people use. It just reveals how deeply this idea of a correct language is tied to the dialect of the dominant group in a society. So, we've seen that human language is this deep, complex system of meaning, tied up with culture and power, which, of course, brings us to a very 21st century question that really puts our definition to the test. What about AI? We hear the phrase generative AI constantly, right? Chatbots like ChatGPT can write things that look and sound incredibly human. But now that we understand what a mental grammar is, do these large language models actually have language? Are they really generating it the way we do? Well, let's break it down. Our language is genuinely generative. We use our mental grammar to create totally new sentences to express new ideas. LMMs, on the other hand, are just combinatorial. They're not creating based on ideas or meaning. They're just predicting which word is statistically most likely to come next based on all the text they've been trained on. At their core, there's no meaning, no ideas, just math. Some researchers have put it, well, a little more bluntly. In a 2024 paper, a team of ethicists came to a very direct, very memorable conclusion about what these programs are actually producing. So really, the best way to think about these systems is as incredibly powerful statistical parrots. They are phenomenal mimics. They can string words together in a way that seems to make sense, but there's nobody home. There's no understanding, no intent, no meaning. The meaning only happens inside our heads when we read their output. So let's leave it with this thought. Grammar isn't some dusty rulebook you have to follow. It's a living, breathing, creative system inside our minds that makes us human. It's the shared code that connects us. So, knowing that, how does it change the way you listen to the people around you?